Velvet key, stolen kiss. In my line of work, you learn which doors deserve to stay closed. Some resist because the paint has married the jam, some because their owners asked me to make them stubborn. A few too few refuse out of principle. I run silver-leaf lock and key on the corner where the laundromat hums like a tired lullaby, and the bakery lets out its morning secrets before the sun knows what to do with them. On the wall behind the counter hang rows of blanks, brass and nickel, novelty skulls, a heart-shaped thing I make for teenagers who think romance begins with a key. My wife loved to joke that she married me for the master key. Lena has a laugh like a chandelier. You're not sure it's safe, but you can't stop looking. When we moved into our apartment, I tuned the deadbolt until it sang under my fingertips. She leaned in the doorway, hair up in something that looked accidental, and said, "Promise me the world won't get in." I promised. It felt like a vow I could keep with tools. The city taught me to listen. Old buildings groan differently when they're honest. People do too. I could hear when a customer needed a spare for a forgetful roommate versus a spare for a second life. Usually I minded my own. A locksmith keeps two ledgers, one for payment, one for mercy. The night the ledger changed, the concierge of the Halcyon residences called with a voice that wanted discretion. "Sir, we have a jam on 12. Guest says the latch threw. He asked for a Rowan by name." I don't advertise by name. Somebody had done the remembering for him. I grabbed my kit, locked the shop, and walked the 10 blocks through a rain that practiced touching everything lightly first. The Halcyon is the kind of place that whispers its price. The elevator gave me my reflection and the time to lie to it. I didn't. Suite 1203 wore its peephole like a secret. I knocked. A male voice warm enough to charge rent called, "1 second." The chain was on. Chains are talismans, not security. Through the crack I saw a cufflink shaped like a moon, the corner of a jacket that knew about tailoring, and God help me. A silk scarf washed in Lena's perfume looping off a chair like a half-finished question. A laugh inside, hers, a note I'd tuned my life to. My hands didn't shake. They did what years had taught them. I set the wedge, slipped the chain, eased the latch with a sliver of steel, and let the door open half an inch on air pressure alone. "Maintenance," I said to the crack, and when the owner of the moon cufflink appeared, I was already stepping back, professional, invisible. He nodded like men who are used to help nod, and I fixed a latch that wasn't broken, while the sound of two people pretending the room was a different city seeped under the bathroom door. I left with a tip too crisp to be generous and a blueprint of the ache behind my ribs. Outside, the rain had decided not to be polite anymore. I walked home with my collar up, the city in the kind of mood where it asks if you're sure. I was. Lena was on the sofa when I came in, an ankle tucked beneath her, a glass of water sweating on the coaster. She was wearing the dress I'd seen puddled on a chair 10 minutes earlier, which meant I had been asked to unlock my own ignorance. She looked up and smiled the way you smile at a man you're still hoping will remain the man you married. "Emergency?" she asked, and I realized we were both going to pass for a few more hours. "Halcyon," I said, and hung up my jacket like it weighed more than fabric. She patted the cushion beside her. I sat. We watched a show that described itself as funny with the insistence of a liar. Her knee leaned into mine. My hand found her wrist on impulse, thumb pressing the pulse I'd loved since our first slow dance in a kitchen too small for the future. It answered. So did the peppermint note of a cologne I'd never met until tonight. It would make a better story if I confronted her right there, if I said the room number and the color of the scarf, and the name I'd read on the check-in screen. Instead, I did what people do when the floor has politely moved 4 inches to the left. I kept my balance and called it grace. The next afternoon, a woman came into the shop trailing the smell of rain and cinnamon. She set an antique key on the counter like a dare. "Iris," she said, offering the other hand. "Theater. I need this copied for a door that doesn't like being told what to do." A sergeant of a face, shadows where the eyes decided to keep their counsel, mouth ready to forgive if asked properly. The key was a warded beauty, iron, teeth like a skyline before the cranes arrive. I took it, felt its weight, felt hers. "Wardeds don't love to be duplicated," I said, "but I like the ones that argue." "Then we're well matched," she said. "Does yours?" Her glance slid to my wedding band and back with the kind of economy only honest people manage. "It used to," I said before I could help it. She didn't look away. "Bring it by the theater when it's done," she said. "The back alley door. I'll be the one pretending to fix a curtain and actually trying to keep the set from telling secrets." She left me with iron on the counter and the feeling of having been measured by somebody who wasn't carrying a ruler. I cut the key. It fought, then softened, then agreed. At home, Lena was a masterpiece of domestic future tense. "This week is intense," she said, scissoring paper for a mood board whose tones matched the cufflink man's tie. "But the weekend is ours. Restaurant with the pasta you like, or the rooftop where the bartender says your name like a plot twist." She kissed my cheek and left a faint dusting of makeup I didn't belong to. I stood in the kitchen and watched the kettle find a reason to speak. The theater's alley took the damp in and made it smell expensive. Iris was where she said, half up a ladder, one knee bent, a staple gun debating morality in her hand. She looked over her shoulder with her whole body. I held up the copy and she climbed down, landing close enough for me to read the flecks in her eyes. "You brought it," she said, and I thought about all the ways that could be true. She tested the key in a rehearsal door that had sworn at gentler hands. It turned like a decision. Iris smiled in the way that makes you want to move toward whoever knows how to do that with their mouth. "Can I pay you in coffee and a confession?" she asked. "I've been working for both all week," I said. We found a spare bit of stage where two ghosts could meet without charging admission. She poured from a thermos that had been places and told me about a marriage she had left carefully, like diffusing the wrong device first. "He wanted the audience to stand," she said. "I wanted them to lean forward." She sipped. "You." "I want the door to open because someone knocked," I said, "not because someone learned the trick." There are touches that end up edited out of decent movies and still make them better. The back of her hand grazed my wrist when she passed the cup back, a flutter that found the switchboards of my forearm and whispered through. We didn't name it. We finished our coffee like careful people and parted as if the air hadn't just signed something on our behalf. The halcyon called again 2 nights later. "Same guest," the concierge said, apologetic. "Different door. He asked specifically for you." Room 903 this time. The latch had taken offense instead of instruction. I worked the torque wrench through irritation that had become a seam down the center of my chest. The door opened. Behind it was a suite arranged to photograph well and not be lived in. My wife's scarf wasn't anywhere visible. Her laughter wasn't either. Instead, a pair of cufflinks glinted from the dresser, moons again, as if orbit were a personality trait. Beside them, a small velvet pouch half open, spilling something amber across silk. "Forgot those," a voice said, eyebrow first. He was handsomer up close in the way some men are when they've never had to be asked twice. "You always will," I said without looking up. He laughed like he'd found a new bartender and held his hand out for the cufflinks. I gave them to him as if metal didn't carry fingerprints. The safe in the closet argued. He didn't ask me to open it. He assumed I would. Men like him assume a lot. I tapped the keypad and felt the code he'd chosen wearing its arrogance like cologne. The door swung. Inside, a watch box, a passport, a single pearl earring that had played hooky from Lena's ear during a party last spring. I looked at it and something in me sat down. "Thanks, Rowan," he said, and I realized he'd read my name off my kit, filed it, and would use it later the way he used everything. "You're welcome," I said, and after I left I stood in the service corridor where the carpet forgets itself and let the length of it do the math of a decade with me. The store did what stores do, kept me moving forward one transaction at a time. A teenager wanted a key that said fierce in cursive. A landlord asked for 5 copies and then warned me she would blame me when her tenant lost theirs. A florist from up the block brought me a peony the size of a prayer and said business was good because love was careless this season. In the afternoon, Iris arrived with a smile like a light left on in the right room. "We're about to lock the set for opening night," she said. "Could you," and then, noticing my face, "or I can come back when the world is less heavy." "It won't be," I said. "Let me make you a duplicate while you tell me what your ghosts have learned." While the machine solved something with burrs and friction, she leaned over my counter and traced the ridges of an old mortise lock like reading a palm. "Sometimes a door sticks," she said, "because it's swollen with weather." "And sometimes," I said, "because the person on the other side has their hand against it." She looked up, Rowan. "It's fine," I said, and knew how untrue I sounded. "Tell me something beautiful so my mouth remembers the shape." She did, because she's the kind of person who can steal a small ache and return it as a ribbon you don't mind wearing. When I gave her the duplicate, she closed her fingers over mine a second longer than a handshake allows. No thunder, no orchestra, just warmth, skin to skin, the city practicing softness. I didn't plan the ending. I designed it, which is different. A boutique Lena's firm was opening requested an overnight rekey, new cylinders for the front and office doors, an old safe's dial restored to something that didn't feel like a joke. The invite-only preview would happen the next evening. The space looked like gold had learned to whisper. I let myself in after midnight with a key someone should not have loaned me and put my craft in all the places people forget craft lives. The last task was the safe, a battered green sweetheart with a wheel that hummed back secrets. Someone had set the combination to a birthday that wasn't mine. I changed it to the only date I still wanted to respect, the day Lena and I had been brave enough to be poor together and call it marriage. Then I wrote the numbers on a card and slipped it into the velvet pouch that had once held cufflinks and lately held my belief in coincidence. At the preview, the room admitted only clothes that had somewhere important to be. I wore my good shirt and the face my job had taught me. Lena arrived on the arm of a man whose suit argued with the idea of modesty. They looked like the bad end of a story people pay to watch because they want to feel dangerous at a safe distance. I shook hands. I made eye contact with people who collect eye contact as if it accrues interest. I waited until the owners needed access to the safe for an antique ledger they planned to display. The dial, now a different truth, spun. The door refused. The manager flustered. The cufflink man made a phone call to someone paid to show up with admiration. "I know a locksmith," Lena said, like a line she hadn't practiced and didn't want to say. She found me at the perimeter of the crowd where all good locksmiths live. "Rowan," she said, and my name behaved itself in her mouth, but I could tell it needed rehearsal. "Could you?" "Of course," I said. I knelt at the safe. The silk pouch was there, right where the ledger should have been. I opened it and removed the index card I'd written. When the numbers faced us, the air changed shape. Lena's eyes moved the way eyes move when the world has politely tilted a few degrees and asked if you're committed to your previous opinion. That date, she said, why would? That's how it opens, I said. It remembers what matters even when we forget. I worked the wheel and let the safe give up its theater. The manager applauded his own relief. The cufflink man applauded nothing. Lena stood very still, then stepped close enough for the perfume on her throat to remind me there had been good reasons for everything we were ruining. I'm sorry, she said, real words. Unadorned, they landed. They didn't fix anything. That isn't their job. I know, I said. Me too. We found a quiet office with a window that pretended privacy wasn't a performance. We talked like adults who had once been children making forts out of blankets. I didn't list names. She didn't list excuses. We took out the map of our years and admitted which roads we'd loved and which we'd driven with the radio up too loud to hear the engine complain. When we hugged, it wasn't a prelude. It was gratitude and grief and the clean release of a door that finally closed without splinters. We undid our marriage with kindness. It should be the law. After the last champagne glass pretended to be a promise and went home empty, I walked back to the shop. Iris was waiting on the step with a paper bag that smelled like bread and a coat that had been made for Rain to lose an argument against. "How did it go?" she asked, standing before the question as if it lived in a place she'd be welcome. "We told the truth," I said. "The door opened, the door closed." She nodded, and for a long minute we just shared the same patch of sidewalk, the bakery's ghost sugar rising around us, the laundromat stacking its warmth into tidy heaps. Then Iris reached out, and with the back of her fingers, traced the line of my jaw in a gesture so soft it should have been illegal and never will be. I leaned forward, not far, not dramatic, just enough for our mouths to find the kind of kiss that passes every rating and still carries a warning for people who have forgotten how to breathe. Her hand slid to the back of my neck. Mine found the small of her back, where fabric and skin shake hands. We kept it gentle. We kept it right there on the step, two people in a city full of stories choosing the one where the scene knows when to fade. We didn't invent fireworks. We didn't need them. We ate bread out of a bag and laughed like we'd both been holding our breath and had just remembered our bodies understood air. I showed her the pegboard of blanks inside the shop. She chose one with a tiny star cut into the head. "For luck," she said. I cut it while she watched, metal singing under a wheel that knows when something is true. When I pressed the key into her palm, she closed her fist, then opened it again and slipped the brass ring onto my finger for a second, a joke that wasn't, a ceremony for two. "Not a master," I said. "No," she said, "better, one that only opens what deserves you." I still fix doors that stick because the weather forgot to be kind. I still answer calls from concierges who need a man who can be invisible. Sometimes, when the halcyon calls, I send my apprentice. He's good with delicate things and still believes a lock is a puzzle, not a confession. On nights when the rain is practicing its vowels, Iris will swing by after the curtain call, shoulders humming with the applause she refuses to hoard. We'll stand in the shop with the lights low and take turns telling each other what the day did to us, and sometimes, if the mood tilts right and the city averts its eyes, I'll step behind the counter and lift her onto the scarred oak, hands on her waist, and kiss her the way locksmiths kiss. With patience, with precision, with an attention to the way things are meant to fit when you respect them. It isn't a master key. It's better. It's a door I knock on again and again and a voice that always says, "Come in," and means it.